Welcome to Med Decode. Okay, so let's talk about something almost everyone struggles with at some point. Just getting a decent night's sleep. It seems so basic, right?
Absolutely, but it's a huge issue, especially, it turns out, for young adults. We're talking roughly ages 19 to 30 here.
Right, that age group. It's often pretty intense. You've got school, maybe starting a career, figuring out life.
Exactly. It's a real pressure cooker, lots of stress, new independence, and very often not nearly enough sleep.
Yeah.
So people get desperate, lying awake at 3 a.m., just wanting their brain to switch off.
And when you're desperate, you reach for, well, quick fixes, DIY solutions. Maybe used to be, I don't know, melatonin or that classic idea of a nightcap, a drink before bed.
Sure, the traditional approaches.
But it seems like the landscape is shifting. Increasingly, that DIY solution involves cannabis.
That's what the data is showing you.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get into the findings of a major study. It's from 2025, published in JAMA Pediatrics. They surveyed almost 1,500 young adults in the U.S.
A pretty significant cohort.
Yeah, and we want to figure out just how common this self-medication thing is, using cannabis or alcohol specifically to, force sleep.
And we really need to stress this isn't just about feeling a bit tired.
No.
The study highlights a serious problem. More than 1 in 5. Think about that. Over 20% of these young adults reported real difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep.
Wow.
And when you combine sleep problems with this really critical developmental stage, young adulthood, throwing substances into the mix, well, it can seriously magnify the risks.
Okay, so let's get to the headline number, the big statistic from this research that really jumps out.
Yeah, the overall prevalence.
When they asked these young adults if they used cannabis or alcohol specifically to help them fall asleep, the number was, well, honestly, it's kind of staggering, 22.4%.
22.4%. Yeah, that's more than 1 in 5 young adults.
Just let that sink in. Line up 5 young adults, Statistically, one of them is using a substance just to get their sleep started.
It's huge. And it really points to maybe a lack of healthier ways to cope with insomnia for this generation.
Okay, wow. Over 1 in 5. Let's definitely break that down. Section 1, a nightcap or nighttime cannabis. Is that old idea of the drink before bed still the main go-to when people are actively trying to sleep?
Well, this is where things get really interesting, and you see a clear shift. When you look inside that 22.4%, the choice is overwhelmingly cannabis.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The difference is statistically significant. You can't argue with the numbers.
Okay, give us the specifics. How does it break down between the two?
All right, so across all the young adults surveyed, 18.3% said they used cannabis specifically to help them fall asleep.
18.3%, okay.
Now compare that to alcohol. For the same specific purpose initiating sleep, only 7.2% reported using alcohol.
Whoa. So cannabis is more than double the rate of alcohol as a chosen sleep.
Way more than double, yeah.
That's fascinating. Especially, like you said, considering how culturally normal the nightcap idea used to be. It feels like a major generational shift in how these substances are viewed.
It really does.
But why, though? I mean, both can make you drowsy, right?
Yeah.
So why is cannabis seen as this functional sleep aid so much more than alcohol?
That's exactly what the researchers dug into. They asked people who already used these substances in the past year about their reasons for using them.
Ah, okay. So looking at existing users tells you about specific intent.
Precisely. It separates recreational use from deliberate functional use for sleep.
Got it. So let's start with the cannabis users, people who used it in the past year.
Okay, among those individuals, a really striking 41.4% said they used cannabis specifically to help them sleep.
41%. So nearly half of the people already using cannabis see it as like a tool for their sleep problem.
Exactly. They're viewing it almost like a medicine for that specific issue. It's not just a side effect, it's the intended effect.
Wow. Okay, that 41% figure really reframes the conversation around cannabis use, doesn't it? It's not just recreational for a huge chunk of users.
Not at all. Now, let's look at alcohol users for comparison.
Right. People who drank alcohol in the past year. What percentage of them drank specifically to fall asleep?
It drops dramatically, only 8.6%.
8.6%. That's tiny in comparison.
A huge gap.
That disparity basically tells the whole story, doesn't it? Young adults seem to be deliberately choosing cannabis as a targeted fix for sleep issues. In a way they just don't view alcohol. Alcohol might make you sleepy sometimes, maybe after a night out, but it's not being intentionally used as an insomnia treatment nearly as often.
That's the clear takeaway. For this group, cannabis seems to fill a perceived functional need solving a sleep problem. Alcohol seems to remain mostly in its social, recreational space, with sleep being a much less common motivation for use.
Okay, this is fascinating. Let's shift gears slightly into section 2, because this is vital for anyone who works with or supports young adults. Who is most likely to be using these substances for sleep? The study identified some key risk factors.
Yeah, they used statistical methods to pinpoint who's at higher risk. They calculated adjusted odds ratios, or AORs.
Right, AORs. Remind us quickly what that means.
Sure, think of an AOR as telling you how much more likely one group is to do something compared to another group, even after you account for other factors. So an AOR of 2 means twice as likely, 3 means 3 times as likely, and so on. It helps isolate the specific risk factor.
Perfect. Okay, let's look at cannabis first. What predicted using cannabis for sleep?
2 main things really stood out: gender identity and how often they used cannabis.
Okay, tell us about gender identity.
Well, women were significantly more likely than men to use cannabis for sleep, and individuals identifying as another gender were even more likely.
How much more likely? What were the AORs?
For women, the AOR was 1.99, so almost twice as likely as men.
Okay, nearly double.
But for those identifying as another gender, the AOR jumped way up to 4.18.
4.18. Wow, over 4 times more likely.
Yeah, a really significant difference.
That's huge. And it suggests, doesn't it, that maybe we can't just look at sleep problems alone. Maybe there are underlying issues like higher rates of stress or anxiety, perhaps related to minority stress for some groups, that are driving this self-medication with cannabis.
That's a very likely interpretation, yes. It really highlights where support is most needed. If you're a clinician or even just a friend, seeing that number tells you certain groups might be facing unique pressures and lacking other coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. Okay, what was the other big factor for cannabis use for sleep? You said frequency.
Right, frequency of use. This was a big one. If a young adult was already using cannabis frequently, the study defined this as 20 or more times in the past 30 days, so near daily use.
Okay.
They were 3.58 times more likely to use it specifically for sleep compared to people who use cannabis less often.
3.5 times more likely. That points to that cycle, right? Heavy use becomes functional use, almost a necessity.
Exactly. It suggests a transition from perhaps recreational or occasional use to something they feel they need just to manage a basic function like sleep.
That makes sense. Now, was the risk profile different for using alcohol for sleep?
It was, yeah. The strongest demographic predictor shifted. For alcohol, race, and ethnicity were more prominent.
How so?
Non-Hispanic Black young adults were found to be over 3 times more likely, an AOR of 3.03, to use alcohol for sleep, compared to non-Hispanic white young adults.
Okay, so different patterns. Gender identity was a strong predictor for cannabis for sleep,
Right?
while race ethnicity was a stronger predictor for alcohol for sleep. It suggests maybe different underlying reasons or social context driving the choice of substance.
That seems plausible. But one thing was consistent across both substances.
What was that?
Frequency. Just like with cannabis, young adults who drank alcohol frequently again, 20 or more times in the past month, were 3.31 times more likely to use it specifically for sleep.
Okay, so the big takeaway on risk is, regardless of which substance, heavy, near-daily use is the single clearest sign that someone is likely using it functionally as a sleep aid.
That's definitely one of the major conclusions, yes. High frequency strongly suggests dependence for sleep regulation.
All right, this brings us to the really critical question in Section 3. Why should we care? If it helps them nod off initially, what's the problem? Why is this a bad fix? You called it the sleep aid trap.
Yeah, and this is the core warning from the study and from sleep science in general. While these substances can induce drowsiness and help you fall asleep faster initially,
Right, the immediate effect seems positive.
relying on them night after night is actually really detrimental. It often ends up making the original sleep problem much worse in the long run.
How does that happen? What's the mechanism?
It boils down to tolerance. The body adapts really quickly.
Okay.
It develops tolerance, meaning you need more and more of the substance, higher doses, more frequent use, just to get that same initial sleep-inducing effect. What worked last month might not work tonight. So the solution itself forces you to escalate the dose just to get back to baseline sleep.
Exactly. And that escalation is a direct pathway towards potential substance use disorder. But here's the real kicker, the irony.
Yeah.
Regular use, especially as tolerance grows, actually messes up your sleep architecture. It disrupts the deep restorative stages of sleep, like REM sleep.
So even if you fall asleep faster, the quality of the sleep you're getting is worse.
Much worse. So over time, the very substance you started taking because you couldn't sleep can make your underlying insomnia more severe and harder to treat. It completely undermines the original goal.
That really is a trap. You're trying to solve problem A, can't sleep, but the solution creates problem B, dependence, tolerance, and ultimately makes problem A even worse.
Precisely. And layering this onto young adulthood, this period of intense brain development, social learning, establishing habits, just amplifies all those risks. Substance issues and sleep problems feed off each other.
It creates this really challenging situation that demands attention.
Absolutely. It's a high-stakes intersection. Okay, so that leads us perfectly into section 4, the wake-up call. What are the practical takeaways here?
Yeah.
What should listeners, whether they're clinicians, parents, friends, or young adults themselves, take away from this?
Well, for anyone in a clinical or counseling role, doctors, therapists, counselors, this study is a clear signal. You need to screen for this.
And you actively.
Yes. Actively ask about the connection between substance use and sleep. If a young adult patient mentions sleep problems, don't just ask if they use substances, ask how and why. Ask specifically, are you using anything at night, like cannabis or alcohol, to help you fall asleep?
Right. You have to connect the dots.
You have to, because you can't effectively treat the sleep issue without addressing the substance use and vice versa. They're often intertwined.
And if framing it that way helps move the conversation away from just, judgment about using substances.
Exactly.
And towards understanding it as potentially a coping mechanism, albeit a harmful one, for a real problem like insomnia or anxiety.
Yeah, precisely. And for parents, peers, mentors, anyone supporting young adults, this research highlights the need for open conversations.
Conversations about what specifically?
About stress management, about healthy sleep habits. If young people are turning to daily or near daily substance use just to wind down and sleep, it strongly suggests they're missing other healthier tools in their toolkit.
So we need to be proactive in offering those healthier alternatives.
Yes. Providing information about things like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, good sleep hygiene, stress reduction techniques. Basically giving them effective, non-substance-based ways to manage sleep and stress before they fall into this self-medication trap.
Okay, so let's try to summarize the core message here. We've learned that a significant portion, over 1 in 5 young adults, are using substances, particularly cannabis, quite intentionally to try and fix their sleep problems.
Right. A common issue met with a readily available but ultimately harmful solution.
But by doing that, they're stepping into this trap of tolerance and dependence, which not only risks substance use disorder, but actually makes their sleep worse in the long run.
It's a really clear example of unintended consequences, especially during such a crucial life stage. A short-term sedative becomes a long-term problem.
So we established that high-frequency use, 20 or more times a month, is the strongest predictor that someone is using either cannabis or alcohol specifically for sleep.
Correct. That frequency is a major red flag for functional dependence.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to think about after this deep dive. Given that intense frequency is key, maybe the most important question isn't just what substance they're taking to fall asleep, but why are they maintaining that level of near-daily use in the first place? What underlying pressures, maybe academic, financial, social, environmental, are driving this generation towards such consistent substance use as a coping mechanism, day in and day out? What's the root cause of needing that daily fix?
That's the deeper question, isn't it? Beyond the sleep issue itself, what's driving the underlying pattern?
Something to definitely mull over. We'll leave that thought with you.
And that's a wrap on this episode of MedDecode. I really appreciate you joining me today. If something we talked about sparked your interest, or if there's a medical term that's been bugging you, let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, be a pal and share it with a friend. We'll catch you on the next one.